Where did this come from? Where did the idea stem from, and how did you get started?
I would read a lot of news about downtown St. Pete, but there was no one source for all of that.
I have a line in life with business, right? If you're not growing, you're dying.
And St. Pete is anything but dead.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Talkin St. Pete. I am your host, Ryan Bogdan. Before we jump into today's episode with our awesome guests, who you may not know, but you definitely know what they're running, I want to let you know that this episode is sponsored by Bogdan Homes. If you know anyone looking to buy, sell, or invest in real estate, please don't hesitate to give us a call, as that's how we keep this awesome podcast going. And now for our guests, we have Brian Zucker and Anthony Close, who are the founders, runners, all the fun things of St. Pete Rising, which all of us go to find out all the fun things that are happening in St. Pete and all that's new to come in terms of development, restaurants, bars, you name it. You guys are keeping us all informed, and I'm so impressed with what you've done over the last 10 years as we're at 10-year anniversary. We were just talking about that before we went live. You said in May.
Correct. Yeah.
And that started with you, Anthony, yes?
Yeah. Well, first, thanks for having us on.
Yes,
But yeah,
of
our
course.
10-year anniversary is coming up in May. It's been a crazy 10 years for us, the number of changes we've had over the lifetime of the site. But Brian and I are so excited to continue running it and serving the people of St. Pete, and so excited to see what the next 10 years looks like.
Yeah, for real. I mean, you've grew this mass audience and a huge database of information of everything that has happened. I want to start from the get, because I understand, Anthony, this was your startup before Brian got involved, right? So where did this come from? Where did the idea stem from, and how did you get started?
Yeah, so I grew up in the Tampa Bay area. I went to high school in Tampa, and then attended the University of Florida in Gainesville. And I'd come home to St. Pete for holidays and breaks, and there just happened to be so much new construction in St. Pete that personally it was getting...
And when was this?
This was around 2013. 2012, 2013 was when I started at UF. And there got to be so much new construction in St. Pete that I was losing track, and I wanted a blog, essentially, to keep track of the new development and things happening in the city that I was away from. And so started out with this development map that I created that was sort of just a personal resource for myself to keep track of everything.
Now, what was your major in? Why were you so interested in this?
Yeah, so I studied finance and real estate at UF, but definitely didn't major in blogging and never thought I was going to go into that.
Right, and you're noticing new construction, but I know, like, okay, I need to document this. And
yeah, it was more just, I've always loved kind of data and maps, and I would read a lot of news about downtown St. Pete, but there was no one source for all of that in St. Pete. And so wanted to document it myself. And then over time, it started to grow. And Brian was a really avid reader of the site and loved what I was doing with new development. And
Just a fan.
he was just a fan and would essentially email me kind of constantly. He's pretty persistent.
I like that.
And was like, you should report on this new restaurant coming soon. You should report on, this new building coming soon. And eventually, I was just a college student, didn't have a lot of time. And I'm like, do you just want to write, like, for us? Do you want to just write articles for St. Pete Rising? And then he ended up coming on board, and that's sort of the launch pad of what it has become.
So, Brian, you were feeding him some information of, like, you're forgetting about this. Don't forget about this.
I was new to Tampa Bay. I moved to the area in 2011 and quickly fell in love with St. Pete. And like Anthony, you'd walk down Central Avenue. Even back then, there was a lot going on, and there wasn't a lot of reporting, right? And there was a lot that flew under the radar, right? I mean, you'd walk down Central Avenue, you'd see storefronts were papered up. There was no coming soon sign. You didn't know what was going on. Whole blocks were under construction. And I've always been interested in the growth of cities. Everywhere I've lived, I've been into this. And so quickly found St. Pete Rising and started, emailing Anthony. And
how'd you find it? Through Google? Was your
SEO? I think it was Google.
Your SEO was working there.
Yeah,
Anthony.
Unintentionally, but yes,
Yes.
I was essentially just it was just a WordPress site, like stprising.wordpress, and I was just
Early days,
yeah. And this was like, I mean, I look back sometimes on what I wrote back then, and I'm like laughing because it was just like, it was sometimes in very much first person. Like I was walking down Central, and like it was not what it is today. And so it's funny to look back and see just the growth that we've had. But yeah, when Brian joined St. Pete Rising, joined the team, we started reporting more on restaurants and retail, and that's sort of when the growth really took off.
So how are you finding out this information? That is what I'm so intrigued about. Is like I understand
That's the secret
in
sauce.
commercial. There's a
This is
gotta
the
be a-
$1 million question.
Got it. Yeah, because how do you guys stay in the know? And I can imagine now someone launching something new probably coming to you, right? Because they know
Right.
that you can get the word
Correct.
out now. But in the early days, not
We were
so much.
nobody.
Right.
Right. So you're right. In the beginning, it was very investigative. We had to, find scoops ourselves and
Walking
really
past the building and try to figure out what's going on.
right. Exactly. I'll say every story is different, right? So we figure out what's going on. It's different every time. It could be public records. It could be a relationship that we have that we've built over years. It could be
Walking down the street.
Yeah, it could be walking down the street. It's a number of things. But what has happened over the past 10 years is we've built these relationships that really allow us to have eyes all over the city now, right? So we are out on Central Avenue and downtown every day, walking around and talking to people, but we also have loyal fans and readers of St. Pete Rising that are looking out for us, and we get texts and emails and messages all the time from people saying, hey, I heard about this or that, or I was at this event and someone told me this. And so sometimes that gives us a little hint.
Right.
And
Little
then
insider tip,
right. And
yeah.
it allows us to look into it and dig.
I think what's really important too, which sometimes separates us from your more traditional media outlets, is we live and breathe St. Pete, downtown St. Pete, and we are walking around every day. We're talking to people every day. Every interaction we have could be a story, could lead to some sort of story. And so we're out in the community building those relationships that may not produce content for years to come, but over time we've been able to build those relationships. And so when we stop writing at night, we don't take our St. Pete Rising hat off. We're on Facebook. We're seeing people in the community post things. And so
You guys very much have your fingers on the pulse and heart
it never turns off.
of St. Pete.
And I think it helps that we're not journalists because, and also St. Pete Rising is just us, right? We're not owned by a bigger media company
Right.
or anything. We make all the decisions. We call all the shots. And that really helps because we're able to operate exactly how we want. And so, there's certain things that other journalists do that we don't do at no fault of them. It's how they want to operate. That's fine. But, so for example, what's probably most important to us is accuracy, right? We want whatever we publish to be accurate and true. We don't want there to be any possibility
Right.
of it not happening.
Right.
And so in order to do that, we have to talk to the subject matter, whether it's a local business or a developer.
No hearsay.
Right.
You have to go straight to the source.
Yeah.
And in addition, when we first started doing this 10 years ago, I would meet with local business owners and they would say things to me like, this publication's already written about us or that publication's already written about us. And while they were thankful for the coverage, occasionally those publications would, get something wrong. Some detail was off, maybe, like people don't like when, like if they purchased the building, they don't like when the purchase price is included in the article, for example. There's certain things that some journalists include that
It's not needed.
it's just not needed.
Yeah.
And so,
And everyone has their differences,
Right.
different.
So
belts
in the
and
process of because you guys are normally on the other side of this, and
Right.
sitting down with a new developer, a new restaurant owner, and you're asking questions, are you asking of what can we post and what can we not? Or
yeah, so I sit down just like we are right now. We have casual conversation,
Yep.
and I tell them, look, this is your story, and I'm on your timeline, right? So if you tell me that you're not ready for this news to get out, I'm not posting it, right? And what will happen is I'll do an interview, we'll write something up, and then not all the time, but most of the time, we will allow that subject matter to review a draft of whatever we're going to post the night before we publish it, right? And really, that just, again, it's another
for fact
barrier.
checking purposes, not for necessarily
editorial.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I don't want someone to go in and,
Reword
add in a bunch of flowery adjectives and that
Right.
type of thing because, again, we want to be as objective as possible.
Right, you're just giving the facts.
Just given the facts. In most cases, like, for example, if it's a restaurant, we haven't eaten there yet. It's
Right.
not even open.
Right.
Right.
You
So
can't say whether it's good or not.
I can't say that the meat falls off the bone. It might not, you know? And so, so really allowing the subject matter to review the articles, it A, gives them comfort, and B, it ensures that what we're reporting is accurate,
Yeah.
completely accurate. And, you know, you treat people right with respect, and
Good
they
things
come
come
back
of it.
around.
And that's
Yeah.
how we've been able to build those relationships. And those people, when they go to open up their second restaurant or go to build their second building, they come back to us, and we're able to continue that relationship.
Yeah. Do you guys have a sense or an idea of how responsible you are for the success or launch of certain businesses? Like how much traffic can you guys drive?
It's something we've tried to calculate in the past. We can do it with varying kind of degrees. You know,
Yeah.
when we post an Instagram story or a piece of content, an article, and tell people something's opening today, and the business is sort of flooded with new foot traffic. Like sometimes we can take responsibility for some of that. It's a little hard to quantify it.
Yeah.
But what we can kind of more easily take credit for is when we launch certain condo projects, and we have the developer telling us a week after our launch of the project saying, like, you know, your article resulted in X number of reservations, and people who explicitly said, you know, we read your article and we reserved a condo unit in your building. We know that there's a track record of us doing that, and obviously that feels really good to us, and that's another part of our relationship building.
I see that as part of our job.
Yeah, no, you
Right.
guys have this kind of superpower
Yeah.
over St. Pete, right?
Right. I mean,
In a fun way.
yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
tell businesses this all the time. I say, look, you know, opening up a brick and mortar business is tough. It's super tough, right? I don't think I would ever do it, you know?
And you've watched a lot of them, haven't
Right,
you? Yeah.
exactly. And, you know, you need a good concept, good staff, good location, you know, whether it's a restaurant, good food. There's so many things that you have to get right. And then you open the doors and just hope people show up, right?
Build
And
it and they
so-
will come. You
right.
You hope.
Yeah, you hope.
You hope. And so, you know, if we can, as St. Pete Rising, if we can help with that last part, if we can help people show up, then I think we've done our job.
Right. And it's good because you guys haven't turned into like a review site. Like you said, you've done a really good job.
That's really important to us
of s-
to not be put our opinions in some of these.
It's like the
pieces.
initial, this is what's happening, and then what happened after that. It's not like you guys are saying, you know what, get guys shut down or anything. You know what I mean? Like,
I kind of just feel like I'm just an average guy. Like, who cares what I think?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Let me just give you the facts, and then you can eat there and tell me what you think. You know? Form your own opinions.
no, it's great. What new thing is on the site, or what's coming that you guys are most excited about? Like when you like found out something that's published that you can reveal.
Yeah.
That has you all jazzed up right now.
like
'Cause I
in the
think-
city.
Yeah, because there's so many fun things happen, right?
Yeah.
The part of starting this podcast was multiple reasons, but I've discovered that everyone has their own reasons to why they live, work, and play here.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it amazing, right? Because there's so many different little niches throughout the city and little pockets, and always new things coming that you guys are keeping us informed of. That's exciting. Of all of this, you know, some people might say, "Oh, another rooftop bar," but I think we can use it.
We don't have many.
But you don't have
Not
many,
many, yeah.
right? Yeah. No, I saw some meme the other day
Yeah.
of something, and people would say, I'm like, we really don't have that many. Yeah. Yeah. So what's exciting? What's on your guys' radar? What's been out there that has
I mean,
you
this
guys
is
excited?
a pretty kind of obvious one, but I'm super excited to see what the future of the Trop site looks like, the gas plant district. You know, I think that has the opportunity to be one of the most transformative projects in the state, if not the Southeast. And so the timeline of what that eventually looks like, whether the Rays, you know, do indeed build a new stadium there, I think could reverberate throughout the entire city. And, you know, it's not just going to be a downtown project. It's going to be a project that everyone in the region is going to know about. And so I'm super excited for that one, and a little anxious to see, you know, it's been years that has been talked about. So I'm excited for that to be underway, hopefully, but
There's still a long road.
still a long road.
So-
But I think that has the opportunity to be a game changer for our city and how we pitch ourselves to the rest of the country.
I agree, and I'm curious because you guys are definitely probably more informed in where I'm at. Where does that currently stand from where you guys know?
Yeah, so Mayor Welsh has bet on a horse, essentially, right? So he released an RFP. We got 4 responses, and he has chosen one, right? He chose a proposal by the Rays and Hines. And so what's happening now is the city has engaged a law firm, and they're drawing up a term sheet right now. And so basically what has to happen is a term sheet has to be agreed upon. A new use agreement has to be signed. The current use agreement for the Rays, it expires at the end of the 2027 season. In other words, currently, at the end of the 2027 season, the Rays don't have a home. So
That's an issue.
we got to figure something out,
Yeah.
right? So we need to renegotiate that use agreement, and then we move on to the development agreement.
Yeah. So the term sheet essentially is an outline of what roughly what the terms are going to be, right? Which then moves into the development agreement, which is a little more fleshed out, right? So we don't even have a signed term sheet yet. It's basically just like two parties who have said like we're going to continue to talk and try to work this out. Obviously, when there's only two parties that are talking, it's a lot easier than when you've got everyone in the room kind of talking. So we've taken the big step in choosing kind of who the city hopes that party will be, but still a long way in ironing out all of the other items.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. There's still the chance that the Rays could say, no, we want to have something on the other side of the bridge.
Until they sign on the dotted line, anything is possible.
Right.
And both parties want
Because that's the big debate.
Yeah.
Right.
Both sides want to remain, have their leverage in the game too. So the Rays aren't going to say, we're going to stay in St. Pete until the city agrees to X. And it makes sense for both sides sort of in that sense. From my perspective, I want to see the Rays commit to St. Pete yesterday. I would have liked to see them commit already, but I understand that it is a business decision for them. But I think it will work out in the end for St. Pete.
What do you think, Brian?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'd love to have baseball stay in St. Pete. We have a history of baseball. Baseball's been part of our city's narrative for decades and decades and decades, and I hope that continues.
Yeah, I mean, Tampa has all the other sports, right? People can come over here for baseball, right? And I think with a new site, it will drive more traffic and more fan base and be awesome.
With an activated development around it that complements it and makes it a 365-day destination, not just one when there's a baseball game. Because right now, if you drive by the site, it's an empty parking lot, 70% of the time. And obviously that hurts, the surrounding community when that site is not activated. So I'm excited to see a complementary development that goes along with baseball that promotes not just downtown, but baseball as a whole, and hopefully, increases some of the Rays' attendance while also, creating jobs and new businesses and things like that.
Yeah, I think St. Pete has done a great job of keeping things local in that vibe. And I would say, there's concern, there's rumbles out there, people concerned that we get too big, right, too fast with all the new development that's going on. What are your guys' opinions on that? Do you think how much more room do you think we have? And knowing that how much new development is happening out there, what do you think the next 3-5 years looks like for St. Pete?
So I want to back up a second, and I just want to acknowledge that cities are always growing or dying, right? Cities never just stay the same.
I'm glad you said that because I have a line in life with business, right? If you're not growing, you're dying.
Right.
And that's with everything.
My friend Peter, sometimes he has this line where he says, some people want to preserve the city in the amber so that it never changes. But the interesting thing about that is we preserve dead things in amber.
Right.
And St. Pete is anything but dead.
No, it's thriving. It's live. It's here. It's living. It's breathing, and it's going to keep doing what it's going to do.
There are so many exciting things coming to St. Pete. It gets us so jazzed. Like, we're so excited to wake up in the morning. People think I'm crazy when I say this, but I know that we're on a good trajectory because we report on everything new and coming soon, and I can't wait for Mondays. Like, I can't wait for Monday to roll around and, tell more stories about St. Pete. And, there's so much going on. It's hard not to be excited about that. And yes, there are growing pains, of course. And there is a housing affordability issue that needs to be addressed. And that's a complicated issue, right? I mean, that could be a podcast in itself.
It could. It definitely could.
I always tell people, first of all, housing affordability, it's complicated. If it was simple, we would have solved it already.
Right. It's nationwide.
Right. Yeah, exactly. We're not the only city dealing with this right now. And there's also not a silver bullet solution, right? There's not one thing that we can do that will solve all of our problems overnight, right? So we have to implement a number of different things that in aggregate will help alleviate this issue that
Right.
we're experiencing right now.
Yeah. Housing, traffic. The
They
list
go
goes
hand
on.
in hand too.
Yeah, yeah, they
Housing
do.
and transportation generally are solved sort of in similar ways.
Yeah.
Because where you live tells you where you have to travel to and from work, and so they're intertwined like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have a number of issues, but Brian and I sort of, in our roles at St. Pete Rising, are able sort of to see the future of St. Pete. We know the stories that we're going to post over the next few weeks. We know the stuff that's coming we haven't announced. And so, if we're excited about things that are coming soon, everyone else should be excited too. Because
I'm
there's-
excited.
There's a lot of new stuff. and
I'm bringing the heat.
It's
man.
actually
I'm telling you,
more than
I'm
that.
excited.
It's actually more than that. Like, in addition to knowing what we're going to post over the next few weeks, because we've built these relationships over the years, and because I tell everybody I talk to that I'm not going to turn around and publish whatever you tell me, in this conversation, people have learned to trust us and confide in us with, bits of information. And so there's things that we know about that we can't talk about, and it'll happen in the future.
But it's not even on paper yet. Maybe it's
Right.
someone's idea,
Right.
That they're talking to you about. How often does that happen? Do people come to you and say, "Hey, we're thinking about doing this. We know you got, what do you think about X?"
all the time,
Yeah.
honestly.
You guys are
daily.
Yeah, all the time thinking of, "Hey, we're launching this new thing. Do you think that's the right area?"
Well, we see the ideas get born, right? They go from rumblings to now I'm looking for a retail space, or now I'm looking for a general contractor to help build this. It's like sometimes in these conversations we can hear those ideas come from vision to reality,
Mhm.
and it's really fun to be a part of that the entire step of the way, and then ultimately release it to the public and help craft that story, and hopefully a successful idea generate.
Yeah. One thing, Brian, when we had our initial phone call that you said that was interesting, you said everyone digests information differently.
Correct.
And I thought that was really good as we're, doing one form of new communication type-ish right here, right in podcast form. You guys have done a great job in your articles. And now the renderings and images that you guys have, is that all provided from whatever project is going on? Do you guys have any help in that? Because that is a huge part. I'm a visual person.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
so when you can see a concept and, kind of get an idea for what it's going to look like, it's been extremely helpful. I'm curious so you have your images that you're using there in written form. Is there any other format that you're coming out with? For
We
people to-
create a lot of maps to visualize where, a real estate development's going to be, or where, a project might be. The renderings are usually they're provided from public sources, so city submissions or documents, things like that, or they're provided by the developer.
Or directly from the developer.
Got it.
Yeah, but and just to continue the conversation that we had on the phone with, everybody likes consuming information differently. Some people like reading a long form article. Some people like reading a 100-word article,
Mhm.
bite-sized
Right.
chunks, right?
Yep.
Some people like listening to a podcast. Some people like Instagram Reels or TikTok. And so ideally, we want to provide all of that, right? We don't currently do that because we push our content so much, right?
Which is largely long form content.
Right.
So we're still a very small but mighty team.
Mhm.
And right now, our main goal is to tell as many stories as we can. And we do that through our website, and then we push it out to Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, that type of thing. And in the future, I'd love to get into video. I'd love to get into podcast. We actually tried to do audio articles a few years ago. It's a really funny story, actually.
Go ahead, tell it. I'm all
So there's
for it.
there are services that you can buy where you can give this service an article and it'll have a computer read it for you. And it sounds very robotic. It doesn't sound very good. And I thought to myself, I would love to have audio articles for people who have a long commute or something like that. But I don't want the robotic voice. So my wife is a voiceover artist, and so I thought maybe she can just start recording our articles, right? And so she started doing it, and it was great. It ended up being more work than I thought it would be. Obviously we had to edit the audio files and that type of thing and upload them to a server, and it ended up being a lot of work. And I one day she walked into our bedroom, and she heard one of the robots reading a St. Pete Rising article, and she realized that she had been replaced.
Like that. Nope. Sorry, that was too
Yeah.
much work. Yeah.
Yeah, she walked in and she goes, "Did you just replace me with a robot?"
It also added
yeah.
it also added a barrier for us to get some of these stories out and just having to
Right.
take the time to do
Yeah,
that.
no, it is. Less friction, the better. Especially when you're producing as much content as you guys are. So I'm sure you have a well-oiled machine in terms of a system now. But once you add one more layer, now it's a whole new system.
But we're always looking out for new ways we can improve and engage our readers. And like Brian said, because we're not, we're independently owned, we're not owned by a larger company. If we want to try out an idea that might engage our readers better, we try it. We just go for it. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But we're not afraid to try to engage our readers in new ways. And that's one of the things I love that we do is we're willing to try new things and self-reflect on what's working and what's not, and go from there.
What is working the best? I'm curious. You guys are putting out a lot of content. Where are you getting the most engagement?
That's a good question.
That is a good question.
We really have two big spheres of
Audiences.
yeah, we have two big audiences, right? We have the real estate professional, right? So these are agents, investors, lenders, architects, designers, developers. They all care what we're reporting on. And then we also have just the passionate resident, the people who want to know what's the new restaurant that's coming soon, what's the what's that coffee shop?
What's that new
coming
roller
down the
skating
street?
rink opening up? And
Right.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. And so different articles do better with different audiences and on different platforms, right? So, we have a lot of real estate professionals that subscribe to our email newsletter. And so if we send out a real estate, or let's say a new apartment tower or a new condo tower that we're announcing, if we send that out on an email, it's going to do really well. And if we post it on Facebook, it may not do as well as, say, a new restaurant announcement. Right. So
Balancing those two audiences has always been pretty interesting.
Yeah.
For us.
That-
Because we sometimes are able to merge them, but we're always catering to sort of both at the same time. And sometimes there can be clashes if your local resident doesn't want to see a new luxury high rise or something like that. But we're pretty we try to cater to both at the same time, just by providing fact-based articles.
Right. And I'm assuming most of your growth has been organic,
Yes.
right? Because your stuff can spread like wildfire.
we don't advertise.
Right. Everyone shares, reposts, does all the fun things, especially
Right.
when it's a fun new restaurant within the local community. And then as a real estate professional, you got some new news you want to share with your people, then you're doing all the same thing. So that's interesting. I didn't think about how, you definitely have two different spheres there of an audience that you're catering to. Because there isn't a person that I told when I said you guys were coming on that didn't know what your blog was, right? If you live in St. Pete, you know about St. Pete Rising.
It's so weird. It's so
Flattering.
surreal.
Yeah.
It's so surreal to me because St. Pete Rising was never meant to be a business, really, right? Like Anthony started St. Pete Rising in college, and then I came on board because I love this stuff, right? I love this stuff, and so for a while we always referred to St. Pete Rising as our full-time hobby, right?
And
And
it still is in some ways.
it still is, but it's also become much more of a business because it's grown so much, and we've kind of stepped into this place where we actually have influence, and I think we'd be
A lot of it.
we'd kind of be missing out if we didn't use that platform for good.
Yeah.
And so, we try to use it to not only educate, but to promote local businesses.
Which we have a lot of. And I think that's a huge part of what keeps St. Pete so special, is the local business and the fact that you guys have a lot to report on, right? And it's not, a lot of big box and other things that no one really cares about.
And that's really important to continue to keep that local community.
City keeps us busy.
No, they do. They do for sure. They do for sure. Brian, but you didn't get to ask you what's on the radar. What have you put out there that you're most excited about? And you can't use the same thing as Anthony.
Okay. Yeah. So that's probably the biggest project.
that's
the Trop
huge.
Side is the biggest project
It's huge.
of the generation, right?
He stole your thunder because he got to go
It's
first.
okay. I'll go small scale. So this isn't actually something that we've written about yet, but probably by the time this launches, we will have written about it.
You got 3-4 weeks, so
Yeah. So it'll probably go out next week,
Got
the
it.
week after. We'll see.
But we're hearing it first.
Hearing it first.
Yeah.
And so it's what I'm really excited about is Chris Pont, who is a very well-known chef in Tampa Bay, had a restaurant in Clearwater called Cafe Pont for 18 years, and has opened up a few concepts in Tampa, Olivia, Bare Naked Kitchen, On Swan, and most recently Pont in Midtown. He has just signed a lease to open up a new restaurant in downtown St. Pete. And so he's one of the most talented chefs in Tampa Bay.
Right.
And I'm super, super excited.
And now we're bringing some of that taste and that cuisine over here.
It's coming back to Pinellas
Yeah,
County.
it's a pretty large restaurant.
Yeah, it's about 5,600 square feet.
Wow.
So
Wow.
it's going to be a big one.
Can you tell me where it's at?
It's going to be at the bottom of Ascent, which is the new 36-story
My
apartment and hotel building. that
yes,
just
my
opened.
sister and brother-in-law are moving in there in April.
Nice.
Perfect.
So we'll
They
be-
just welcomed new residents this week.
Yeah.
Yes, they did. So we'll get to try out this new spot. We'll be right there. That's amazing. All right, well that's fun news. I
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, we like. There's so much talent here, so much talent,
It's crazy. You know,
and you
it's-
guys seeing it all the time.
you know, I'm still discovering new things, believe it or not, you know, and I live and breathe it. And I'm still discovering new things that I didn't know existed last week.
Right.
And so there's so much below the surface that I think you don't really discover until you've been here and you start to really integrate yourself with the community. And it's amazing.
The local
It's-
secrets.
yeah, it's just such a multifaceted community.
You know, that was when I started this, one of my concerns of anything, right? You start something new, you got the little whispers.
Yeah.
You got the whispers in the back of your mind saying, well, what if no one wants to come on my show? Right?
Yeah.
Luckily, we've had the opposite problem, right? We're booked out. Like I told you guys, it doesn't come out because we're ahead. And so because of how many local businesses there are, I don't think we're going to have an issue because there's always something fun and new to talk about here. And I'm curious, do you guys know Chris Pont? Do you know him?
I do know him.
Brand, yeah.
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 We'll have to see if we can get him on. Talk
Yeah.
to him about his awesome spot. We have you guys heard of Bin 6?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Have you been there?
I have not.
I have.
You have.
It's great.
It's amazing. It's a cool
Yeah.
concept. And I'm going to plug them right now just because it only seats 12 people. 6 at the bar, 6 at the table, and the like very fine dining and very interpersonal experience with the chef coming out and explaining why he did what he did.
Which
and
is
all.
something that you can't replicate as easy as your traditional
No.
national restaurant.
No.
And so those types of experiential places that you can share those stories for are really important. And when we get to support places like that and tell their story, we're helping keep St. Pete local in many ways and
No, you
helping
are.
kind of replicate what they've been able to build, what other people like him have been able to build, and make that more widespread.
Do you think there's any chance, from your experience and what you've seen, that we lose some of the localness as we get bigger? Right, you got these new huge condo buildings going up with a bunch of new commercial space. Sorry, underneath. What if some big guys come in and they push out, and the local guy can't afford the rent space or the lease or?
That is a great question.
And I think we're going to see more national retailers target downtown St. Pete only because we're going to have a critical mass of people. We're going to have a critical mass of people who want certain services, and a lot of those national tenants can offer those. I don't think we're going to see it on Central and some of our main corridors like Beach Drive and Central, but I do think some of the buildings that are off of Central Avenue with brand new retail space that are expensive to rent, we're probably more likely to see national retailers in those spaces versus your mom and pop shop, replacing your mom and pop shop on Central Avenue.
One thing I tell people all the time is that we all vote with our wallets, right? And so if you don't particularly support something that just went in for whatever reason, right? Don't go. And don't tell your friends not to go.
Right.
Right? I mean, it sounds it
But
sounds
that
bad,
is
but
the strongest
I mean,
vote. That-
honestly,
money talks.
Right. I mean, we need to support the businesses that have gotten us to this point. And in most cases, those are the small local businesses who have cut their teeth for years and years and years in downtown and elsewhere in St. Pete. And it's so important that we continue to support them.
And local residents of downtown St. Pete do support our local businesses. We've seen national retailers move into downtown St. Pete and close, like Five Guys, like Subways. We've had 2 Subways close. We've had a Five Guys close. But you continue to see our local businesses thrive. And I think that's a testament to the small businesses that have, gotten us to where we are today. So as long as St. Pete residents continue to support our local businesses and, like Brian said, support them with their wallets, they're going to continue to thrive. And I think bigger and
Is
better
that a
things.
tagline? Can we make that a sticker?
Let's do it.
I like it.
Support us. Support them with your wallet.
And
Yeah.
on the other end of the spectrum, there's really no way for the city to prevent these big corporations or chains from moving in, right? Because property owners have rights, and you can there are creative ways to try to discourage them.
Design standards and things like that.
Right. So our previous mayor, Mayor Kreisman, he passed what's called the Storefront Conservation Corridor Plan, and that limits the width of storefronts in downtown, with the hope that some of these larger nationals wouldn't want that, right? They want bigger stores.
Right. They want the massive, large
So,
front.
but-
Yeah.
And so has that worked? Yeah, I think it's worked okay.
There's
Will
pros
it?
and cons to it.
Yeah, I mean, will it continue to work in the future? I don't know. We'll see. But you can't just directly ban chains.
Right.
That's not legal.
No, yeah, of course you can't. And, as we're talking about this, I'm like, well, most of those are franchises, which are local, probably people at the
Correct.
same time. And my message to them is you just picked the wrong one, right? Yeah. You come up with a little bit of your own creative idea and open
That's
your
part of
storefront.
that's part of the argument when the city was initially trying to ban large franchises, is that we've got a lot of local businesses that are franchises that would be banned as well. So, for example, Kawa Coffee, which was born in St. Pete, would fall under that definition of a chain, of a franchise, a chain. People love Kawa Coffee. They should be allowed to open on Central Avenue if they want. And so you can't, like Brian said, it's not as clear cut. You can't just ban McDonald's,
No.
for example. So it's not as clear cut. But I think the number one thing we can do to protect our small businesses is to frequent them.
Yeah. I just think about that as not even just restaurants, right? But like larger retailers in terms of clothing or Apple or, that
Right.
was one thing when I haven't gotten to ask you guys yet, but I asked the question of what is St. Pete missing? And Matt Glazer from the Shave Cave says an Apple store, and it's like
That'd be great.
an Apple store would be great, but that also would draw other big box retailers and not just from a store, from I had Shelby and Michelle on who have the Canvas. What's the name of that?
Yeah, Canvas Fashion Gallery. and
Canvas.
Hostess.
Thank you. Too much going on in my brain. Yes, but which they're a local boutique. But if we have a bigger, more known clothing line come in, maybe
Right,
it starts to shut that out. I just don't want to see that.
Right.
You
I mean,
know,
if a city Target opens up
Right.
and they can afford to staff
Yeah.
that Target until 10 at night, then and Canvas Fashion Gallery can't afford that. Obviously now
I'm
the
glad you
Target's
knew
more
their names so
convenient.
easily. I don't wear women's clothing, so I just
I,
kind
I announced the article.
Right, of course. You guys are the man. I will give it to because you named off a bunch of places earlier, and man, with the amount of information you guys are spitting out and to then retain it, that's
We truly live and breathe it.
no, you do. You
Yeah.
do.
Ask my wife. It's a sickness.
I believe it.
Yeah.
I believe it. Just to be in real estate in general is a sickness, right? Yeah.
Right.
But and then to have all this fun stuff going on, it's exciting.
Definitely.
I don't remember what we were saying. I don't know. So to that point, what is St. Pete missing in your eyes?
I mean, I would love an Apple store too. I think Apple stores are so desired everywhere that they would probably want to negotiate a very, very good lease deal on their end. One that I'm not sure any landlord in St. Pete would be willing to give them. It depends. I think Sundial's probably the most appropriate place for an Apple store. I haven't looked into it. I don't even know if they're expanding in the U.S.
Yeah.
For all I know, they're expanding, in Europe right now. Maybe
right.
they're not
I'm-
even focused on U.S. expansion.
Yeah, I have
but,
no idea.
yeah, really just anything that we don't currently have, right? So it's funny. I always have in my head this list of businesses that I would like to see here. Like, so for a while, it was
Toy store.
a toy store or like a ramen restaurant. And, if you're patient enough and you wait long enough, you
They
get
show up.
those things,
Right.
right? So, then Booyah Ramen opened up on Central Avenue, and then, Ichikoro was here for a while. And I have a young child. I have a 20-month-old at home, and
Congratulations.
thank you. And I don't know if it's because I have a kid now, but I'm seeing kids everywhere. And so
course.
it blows my mind that we don't have a toy store. I
You know,
think
that's your reticular activating system.
Yeah.
What you have in front of you and what you focus on expands naturally because then your brain seeks it out more. Just a little fun thing. I pay attention to a lot of that stuff.
So there's no local toy store downtown. We have some local businesses that sell toys, but nothing dedicated to toys. And I feel like a lot of cities have that.
Yeah.
And we have some great consignment stores, some children's consignment stores outside of downtown. I'd love to see a small toy store. And we actually, a few months ago, a toy store opened in one of the pier kiosks on the pier called Run Run, Run Run Kids Store. And it's fantastic. They have an amazing selection of toys, and hopefully they do well there, and they can use that little pier kiosk as a springboard into a larger brick and mortar downtown. I'm crossing my fingers.
Yeah, crossing the fingers, and hopefully we can send some traffic to them from this, talking about them right here. It's funny you say it because and going back to your RAS, I don't notice that there's no toy stores, but of course you being a new dad, you're going to look for those things and notice what's missing. So that's a good point.
Well, I always try to shop local whenever I can.
Right.
And there's not a whole lot of options to buy local toys. So I keep finding myself going to Amazon and the Walmarts and Targets. I don't want to have to do that. Right, especially on Amazon, like you don't exactly know what you're getting all the time.
Amazon and it makes it very hard for the toy thing. I can tell you why. Here's a fun little fact about myself. So one of my first real business was retail arbitrage. So I was the guy, man. I was shopping at Walmart, Kmart.
Is this like drop shipping?
Not drop shipping because I had to select all my goods. So I actually went and bought puzzles, dolls, Barbies, Star Wars figures, and I would buy a puzzle for $5 and it would be selling for $25 on Amazon, right? And so I was flipping stuff like that.
Yeah.
And however, what happens is, you get that was in the early days. Now you have so many people doing that there's a thing called the buy box on Amazon. Not a lot of people know this, so listen up. I'm going to teach you something about Amazon. You're not always buying from Amazon. You're buying from a lot of independent sellers, and there may be 30 people selling that one toy. Right, and whoever has most of the time the best price is going to have the buy box. So when you hit that add to cart button, Amazon's automatically picking whose inventory is going into your cart. Unless you go and you hit the button that says see all 32 sellers, you then can select from other people, right? That all might be 2 pennies higher, right, or a penny lower or whatever. But it's whoever is in that buy box. So there's this constant bidding war to be the lowest price. On Amazon. Doesn't necessarily mean you're the lowest price in the nation, right? Walmart might be cheaper. But so that drives the cost of toys down. And that's where, Toys R Us now has issues to stay in business because they can't, their margins. So
it's even worse than that, honestly, because, let's say I'm at a play group and I see there's this little banana teether that these infants use. It looks like a little banana peel.
Yep.
And my kid loved it, right? And so I wanted to go buy it on Amazon. There's a million of them, and I don't know which is the real one. Like half of them are coming from China.
Half of them are all made in the same factory.
Right.
Because then I got into manufacturing my own goods, which I then learned that game. And I learned, my competitors being made at my same factory. So we're really selling the same product. Who has the better marketing or the better pictures or the better reviews?
We're spending, more on marketing.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. So a lot of those, when it comes to that, most of the time, whoever's cheaper, it's probably the same thing. Even if the pictures are a little less of quality, and a little less reviews. If they look the same, they most likely are. I tell people all the time with like the Yetis. The Yeti and the Arctic or whatever they are, most likely are made in the same factory. They literally just have a different paint on them with a different name brand, but one can charge a lot more and one can't. It's fascinating what's happening on that platform. Not to derail, but to your point, the toy store is a hard thing because of that.
Yeah.
Because it's so efficient for me to go to Amazon and get the 1 day shipping and I get the best price.
And I've never opened a brick and mortar retail, so I don't have the solution, but I look at businesses like Book and Bottle downtown. Bookstores are hard, right? So what have they done? They're also a wine bar.
Yeah, it's some wine. People are coming.
Exactly. And so,
Boutique as well.
Right, boutique as well. And so I don't know what Book and Bottle's financials look like. I don't know what percentage of their sales make up wine and books. But maybe the lion's share of their revenue comes from wine and a little bit comes from books. But guess what? People love just being around books. They love working and
The
studying
smell of
around
them.
the books, and so that kind of becomes their brand.
For sure. And if it was just a wine shop, it wouldn't do as well.
Right.
Yeah, so you have to have that concept. That's a good point. You gotta combine two things, as Barnes and Noble and those areas are not around, right?
Right.
Yeah, very, 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 very valid point. What do you like to do most in St. Pete besides write about St. Pete?
You want to go first?
I like to go to all of the festivals in St. Pete. There's so many, and they're so sometimes they're just so kind of limited. Like limited in the sense that your French Fry Festival, for example, like so random, or a seafood festival that I believe is happening last weekend. There's a Flamingo Fest happening at Sunken Gardens coming up. It's like all these little festivals that are so detailed, and I love being out in the community and going to those festivals and running into people that I know and getting to talk to new vendors at them and eating new foods and things like that. And St. Pete's the perfect city for that.
You're the first person to say that, so that's awesome. That's awesome. Do you have the same thing?
So this is again about my kid. My
Yeah.
whole life is my child.
Hey,
right now. So
I can appreciate that.
it's the parks, right? I never really appreciated St. Pete's park system until I had a kid, and now we take him to parks every day. And we
What's
have
your favorite one?
Seminole Park in Kenwood.
Yeah.
Amazing,
Interesting.
an incredible park. There's such a community there. They have it's a much larger park, but there's also a playground there, and all the local kids that live around that area are always at the park, and so you're just bound to know somebody whenever you go, and it's great. It's fantastic,
I
Notice the answers that we both gave revolve around community and being able to run into people in St. Pete. That's one of the things that I think makes St. Pete super special.
You took the words right out of my
Really?
mouth, Anthony. Yes, 'cause I was thinking the same thing.
I think everyone in St. Pete can appreciate that. And whether you're walking down Central Avenue or Beach or dining out on a Friday night, it seems like everywhere you go in the city, you run into people you know.
100%.
And that's not just because we know a lot of people. That's
No.
because, the community is really kind of ground in downtown St. Pete, and everyone goes there to spend their time and shop and things like that. And you just run into so many people, and that's a true St. Pete staple, a thing that people love.
The community is strong.
Yes.
Whether it's with all the festivals that are going on, whether you're with the park community, whether you're part of the volleyball community, whether you're part of the fitness community that's within the gyms, because that's how I got to know people. I've only lived here 2 years, not
Wow.
even quite.
Wow.
Right? But to your point, I now cannot go downtown without seeing someone
Yeah.
I know.
There you go.
It's crazy.
And that's not replicable in a lot of places.
No.
I mean,
It's
even
not easy to
even
manufacture.
across the bridge, Tampa is very different in the sense that doesn't happen to the same extent.
No, there's a lot more people, and I'm gonna try less. I poo-poo on Tampa hard. This is talking St. Pete people. Come on, I can't. When I meet someone from Tampa, I'm like, oh well, I know. I bet you wish that you lived on this side of the bridge. Like, yeah, you're right. I'm like, well, all right. As long as we're in agreement, right? But
Sell them a home, make it happen.
Yeah, exactly. Always trying to get people to come over here because I don't necessarily like to cross the bridge
I'm with
because
you. I'm with you.
it's homey over here.
Yeah.
It's so cozy, and there's so many pockets of communities. I said that in the beginning, and that's what makes St. Pete so special is all these different little pockets. You guys are helping us stay informed on all the fun things that are coming and all the different. You can be a foodie and be in with the foodie community. I mean, it's really, really awesome, and really appreciate everything.
Whatever your niche is, you can find it in St. Pete.
Yes. Yeah, because there's all walks of life here.
Yeah, and it's really, I've always felt St. Pete was very come as you are, right? There are other cities that are very about your appearance, right? And you
Tampa.
have to. Yeah,
Miami.
I wasn't going to say it.
I said it.
You said it, right? Where it's like, okay, it's Taco Tuesday, got to put on your heels, got to put on your suit jacket, right? It's like, it's all about your appearance.
Yeah.
I can go to any restaurant in St. Pete, dressed how I am now, just in a polo, collared shirt.
I wish I was, man. I shouldn't have this jacket on. Hey, I told you guys in the last episode, it gets hot in here. All right, you got to appreciate what these guys are going through. It's a sauna. Yeah, but you're right. You can wear whatever you want.
Yeah, but I love how accepting St. Pete is of everybody. You can really just be yourself, and that's perfectly fine.
It is, and it comes from, we can have, even if you don't have a community you belong to yet, and you're new here, you can belong to the community of I'm new here.
Yeah.
Right.
Because there's so much of that.
Yeah.
Right? There's so
You're not alone.
You're not alone. There is. You look, one out of every two people, I feel like you're gonna is new here. You know, it's
Right.
when I meet a real local that went to elementary school in St. Pete, I'm like, you're a unicorn.
Total unicorn.
Total unicorn. Yeah. What did you say? Where you originally from?
Tampa area.
Tampa area. Yeah, you did.
So
yeah.
regionally, not from St. Pete.
Not from St. Pete,
but-
right? So you can't
yeah,
quite. You're
not quite,
Yeah. When
but
do you
yeah.
get to say you're a local? How long do you have to live here?
I don't know. I still really, sometimes I don't, I still feel like I'm not a local, but I've been here for 12 years.
You guys are
So,
locals because you know
yeah.
more than people who've probably
Yeah.
lived here 40 years.
Right.
So
My Friday nights are spent reading about St. Pete. Like, so
That's funny. That's funny. Last thing before we wrap up, because I'm sweating. Favorite place to eat for both of you?
I would say Sauvignon on Central.
Nice.
Have you been there?
Yes,
It's really good.
it is.
That's a good one. Shout out to Chef CRCA.
There we go.
My favorite is Wild Child.
Another
I have
good
not been there yet.
one. Need a reservation.
Everyone knows that I'm
it's-
trying to go
it's
there. I
really
need to
good,
make it
though.
happen
Do
ASAP.
it. Make it happen.
Yes,
It's great.
I need to go.
good stuff.
I need to go. Well, Brian, Anthony, I appreciate you both so much for coming on and laying some of the awesomeness is with St. Pete Rising, and keep doing all the awesome things that you're doing, which I know you will. And I'm sure, you know what, I would love to have you guys on again down the road, because this is going to be an evolving
Yeah,
conversation.
anytime.
There's going to be fun stuff coming out. For all of you that are still listening or watching, thank you for making it this far. Really appreciate that. Like, comment, share, do all the fun things. Don't forget, if you know anyone moving to the area or you need to sell a home, we got you. Bogdan Homes sponsors this podcast, and we will see you on the next one. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks for having
that was
us.
fun. That was
Yeah.
Cut.
Yeah.
That was good.